Hi, I'm Joe B, and this is a 1963 Jeep FC-170 forward control. We're going to have a look at the braking system and the way the lines are routed, also the fuel system and the way the lines are routed, and we'll take a peek at the emergency brake as well. Starting out at the master cylinder, you can see the first line starts out on a banjo bolt, and the master cylinder is up here underneath the dash, and you can see that that line passes down and through an opening in the doghouse at the front of the cab. The other two lines that are going through that same hole are the speedometer cable and also the emergency brake cable. You can see the emergency brake cable is the one on the right side. The speedometer is the one along the bottom and going up, and the brake line's in the middle there. Your brake light activation switch is in here too. Okay, so from there, those three lines go into the doghouse, and you can kind of see them through the grill in this case. The brake line is the one that you can see that has the coupler in it, right there. The brake line comes through the doghouse in a very short distance, just a few inches later. There's a coupler, and it takes the 1/4-inch brake line that came down from the master cylinder to another 1/4-inch line, and that line loops back and ends up you can also see it from this side here. I'm inside the cooling tunnel right now, and that line goes through, and right here, this is the pitman arm you're looking at, and that brake line is up just under the floorboard, very close to where the that linkage there is actually the accelerator pedal linkage. You can see it kind of goes around it. That's the line there, and ends up at this T-fitting. Now that 1/4-inch line goes into a T-fitting, and the lines that go out are both 3/16 outside diameter. The one that exits towards the back of the truck from that T-fitting goes to the driver's side slave cylinder. That line goes from that T-connector, goes up over a cross member. There's a round cross member here. That line goes back and then over the motor mount. You can see the brake line goes over the motor mount, goes back down, and then it goes into the frame and through the frame to the rubber line that feeds the driver's side slave cylinder on the brakes. Now, if we go back to that T-connector, the T-connector has a line that goes across the front of the truck along the round cross member. If you look into the cooling tunnel, you can see there's notches in the clamps at the end of the cooling tunnel that allow the 3/16 brake line to pass through there. It goes across the front of that cross member and through that mount on this side, and then when it exits the other side, it goes up and over that cross member. So the brake line beginning to see the brake line. You can see the brake line in the center of the picture now. And that goes back, and it also goes on this side, as it did on the other side, it goes up and over the motor mount. I'll get on the other side, behind the motor mount, and I'll show you where it goes from there. Okay, here's the back side of the motor mount. You can see the brake line comes through the center here, comes down, and it goes to another junction box. Now this junction box is 3/16 lines on all sides. The line that leaves from the bottom of this junction box goes to the rubber line that feeds the slave cylinder on the right front tire, on the passenger side tire. And the line that leaves the back of this goes to the back wheels, the circuit that feeds the brakes on the back wheels. Now while I'm up underneath here, let's have a look at the fuel pump. Okay. Okay, so here's the back side of the fuel pump, and the line that goes into the back side of the fuel pump is the one that comes from the fuel line at the gas tank. And you can see there's a rubber section here that's flexible between the engine and the fuel line that's going to go into the frame here. And then that fuel line also passes into the box section of the frame rail, and that fuel line goes all the way back to the gas tank. And this the line from the brake three-way connector also goes into that tube a little bit further back than where the fuel line went in, and travels towards the back of the vehicle. So the fuel input's on the back of the pump here. On the front of the pump is the connection that goes up to the carburetor. That line goes forward, a little bit forward of the engine mount, and goes straight up, and then it's a one-piece tubing that goes all the way to the carburetor body. Now at the top of the fuel pump is the vacuum pump that's used to assist the wiper motor, vacuum powered wiper motor. And the line that comes in the back of the pump, you can see this U-shaped line is where this vacuum pump connects to the vacuum wiper motor. There's a rubber line that goes forward, and that line eventually goes up through the floor of the doghouse and connects to the vacuum wiper motor. The connection on the other side of this vacuum pump is connected to the manifold, and we'll go up and have a look at that next. Okay, you can see the line coming up from the bottom there. That's coming off the front of the fuel pump. The vacuum port, the front of the bottom of the fuel pump, the fuel section, it's coming straight up, and then it goes back and connects into the carburetor. It's kind of tucked in on the side here. You can see it goes down to the bottom of that pump. And then the top line of the vacuum pump that connects to the manifold, you can see that that's the vacuum pump there. The top line is going out the right, and that goes up. Mine's kind of looped around like this, and then connects to the manifold back there for manifold vacuum, and that gives you most of the power for the wipers, and then the boost that the vacuum pump provides helps the wipers run a little bit better. Here's the other side of where the connection came through the frame off of that last three-way connector we looked at for the front, right front wheel brake line, flexible line to the slave cylinder. Okay, so the fuel line and the brake line exit the box section of the frame back here. You can see them down there at the bottom. I've got a little clip in there that retains them both, and I've got a few more clips to put in yet. But those two lines right now are going forward. This is a fuel line. It's a 5/16 inch line. And on my truck, they brought the fuel line up and over, and also there's the second part of the fuel line that goes back to the tank, and this allows for installing a fuel filter right here. I've got a temporary fuel supply on it right now, but this is where the fuel filter would normally be mounted. And then you can see both the brake line and the fuel line follow towards the back of the vehicle. A few couplings in there. There's a little bit of a gap between the end of this cross member and the frame, and you can get the lines through there without any problem. And then if we follow the fuel line back, that's where it would connect to the top of the tank. And if you follow the brake line, it goes to this anchor point on the frame, then connects to the flexible rubber line. It comes down to another three-way connector on the rear axle here, and this line goes to the slave cylinder on the passenger side, and the other line goes over the differential. There's a couple of clamps, and that goes to the slave cylinder on the driver's side. The emergency brakes on the 170 are in the drum brakes. There's a little expander, and they're operated by these cables that go into the back of the backing plates to the mechanism inside. And these cables are connected to these anchor points on the frame on this cross member. There's one on that side. And also one on this side. And it's pretty normal on Willys to require a block there to give you clearance between the cable and the bottom of the exhaust system so they don't rattle or interfere. And of course this cable goes to this side as well. And these two cables come together in kind of a loop into this mechanism here that activates the rear brakes for the emergency brakes. There's a lever, and there's a link and a spring. It's a pretty long setup to provide tension for the return of the emergency brake to the off when you release the handle. There's the lever, and the cable goes forward. And it passes into this frame. It goes forward. And then it eventually makes its way up through that corner cut out in the doghouse where all the connections and that we described coming out of the master cylinder initially, in that point where it exits out the corner of the bottom of the cab here, and then that goes up to the pull handle, the latching pull handle for the emergency brake. I think that covers it.